So question 7, again, we want to solve this equation. Notice how, again, it looks like it's linear because x is a degree 1. So we're going to try to just get x by itself. But to do that, we first have to kind of look at our steps here. So the first thing is, since this looks kind of weird, we want to simplify each side of the equation by removing parentheses, distributive property, and combined like terms. So I don't see any parentheses, and there's not any like terms here. So, but fractions are present. We do have these denominators here, which means fractions are present. What I can do is multiply each side by the LCM. This may require parentheses and distributive property. So also note, if the variable is in the denominator, we have to exclude any number that makes the denominator equal to 0. Well, right now, though, the variable is not in the denominator, so we don't have to worry about that. So since fractions are present, we want to multiply by the least common denominator. Well, since the only denominator is a 5, all we have to do is multiply each side by 5. So the LCM is simply going to be, or a lot of times we'll call it the least LCD, since we're talking denominator. It's just going to be the 5, since that's the only one. So what we want to do is we want to multiply each side by 5. What this is going to do, this is going to allow us to eliminate fractions. So I'm going to put a 5 over here, and then in parentheses, I'm going to put the 6/5 x plus 2. Now on the right-hand side, I'm going to put a 5 out in front, and then I'm going to bring down this 1/5 plus this 1/5 x, close parentheses there. Now, when you're multiplying, the easiest way to do it is actually start with the denominator and use division. So I'm actually going to start here, because this 5's got to multiply to the 6/5 x. So, but when I multiply the 5 times the 6/5 x, what I can really do is just go 5 goes into 5 one time, and 1 times 6x is just going to be 6x. So that turns into that. And then the 5 times the 2, there's no fractions to be concerned with, so 5 times 2 would be 10. So the next thing I'm going to do again is notice how the 5 is going to be multiplied by the 1/5. But what I really do is I start with the denominator and use division. 5 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 1 is just 1. And then when I do 5 times 1/5 x, again, I do the same thing as I start with the denominator. 5 goes into 5 one time, and then I multiply the 1 through the parentheses. 1 times 1x is just going to be 1x, or simply x. So it's going to eliminate fractions. So again, you can use your calculator if you wanted to multiply fractions. You can use what's called the F1 key up here as a shortcut. Notice how F1's in green. So if I hit the alpha key, F1, notice how it's going to create this little fraction mode for me. So I'll quit that. So if I want to multiply 5 times 6/5, I can go 5 times, then hit the alpha button, hit the F1 key. That's going to give me the N over D format. So notice how it's highlighted there. Hit enter. Notice how it gives me my format. So put the 6 on the top, use your directional pad. So down arrow it, hit the 5, and then use your right arrow to come out, close parenthesis, hit enter. Notice how it does give you 6, because again, 5 is going to go into 5 one time, and 1 times 6 is 6. You also can go 5 times 6, which is 30, and 30 divided by 5 is 6 that way. So you can multiply, then divide, but a lot of times I'll divide first and then multiply because it keeps the numbers a little bit smaller. So it looks like we have simplified each side of the equation. So notice how if the variable's on both sides, we want to pick on the little guy. So between a 6x and a 1x, notice how there's a variable on both sides. What I want to do is actually pick on the little guy, which is the 1x. So I'm going to subtract an x here as long as I subtract an x over here. So that's going to make what we'll call a 0 pair. So 6x less than x is going to give me 5x's. The plus 10 comes down, equal sign comes down, the 1 comes down, and the x and the negative x will 0 out. So that just becomes plus 0, which we don't have to put plus 0 there because adding 0 does not change anything. So we now have the variable on one side. Our next goal, though, is to solve for x by getting x by itself. So what we want to do is we want to use a 0 pair for the constant. So the 10 is the constant, so we want to use its opposite, which is a -10, and we want to put a -10 on this other side of the equation. So remember, the property of equality says whatever you do to one side, you got to do the other side. So the 5x is going to come down. The 10 and the -10 will 0 out. and 1 lose 10 would be a -9. So then to get the coefficient, the 5 is the coefficient. Notice how we want to use division to make the coefficient equal to 1. So what I want to do is I want to divide by the coefficient. So I want to divide by 5 here, as long as I divide by 5 over there. So that's how the 5's will divide out. X is going to equal then this X is going to equal then this -9/5. Now, remember the fraction's got to be simplified. So if you use your calculator, if you're unsure, you can just type in -9 divided by 5, hit enter. Notice how it turns it to decimal, but again, they don't want decimals here. They want simplified fractions. So we have to use the math button, and notice how it says convert back to a fraction number 1. Hit enter. That turns that back to -9/5. So keep that in mind as you move forward. So my solution set actually is going to be this -9/5. So we just put that answer inside the braces. We don't put x equals there, just the solution, the -9/5. So it's just wanting the number there. If I want to check this, I got 6/5 times a -9/5. So if I want to use my alpha button, alpha F1, you could type in the 6/5 times the -9/5. And if we add 2 to that, that gives us the left side of the equation, -4/25. And then on the right-hand side, if I have this 1/5, again, if you don't want to use the alphabet, you can use parentheses. You just go in parentheses 1 divided by 5, close parenthesis, and then add to that. Again, I can use parentheses again, in parentheses 1 divided by 5, close parenthesis, and then multiply that by x. I'm sorry, x would be -9/5. So in parentheses, -9 divided by 5. So I can also put fractions in to the calculator using parentheses and the division symbol. Notice how it gives me this decimal. Now, if I want to go to the math button, it'll turn me back to a fraction. And notice how I get then the same answer. I get this -4/25. So that does mean the left side is equal to the right side. So we have verified our answer through checking with the calculator.